That was our producer. You got a quick preview of her. This is Defiance Daily, dispatches for the defiant. I am your host, Miles Taylor. That was our producer, Mercedes O'Brien. Today, we have a lot to talk about. Jack Smith, the special prosecutor who investigated Donald Trump, testified before lawmakers on Capitol Hill in a dramatic hearing. We will tell you what he said and the threat the president of the United States made against him. And then the administration refuses to let up on Minneapolis as the White House tries to turn the Midwestern city into an example. And a lot is happening there. ICE officers, you may have seen, were caught using a 5-year-old child as bait to lure his father outside to arrest him. And then news reports indicate that an autopsy for Renee Nicole Good, the woman who was killed earlier this month by an ICE agent, was released with damning results. We will tell you about those autopsy results today. And then the vice president, J.D. Vance, landed in the city and held a press conference mocking Minnesotans for, in his words, their weird reaction to the masked federal agents that are roaming their city streets and snatching people and disappearing them in vehicles. And then a judge rejected the Justice Department's efforts to charge journalist Don Lemon with a crime for his coverage of the protests. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And finally, a bombshell whistleblower complaint reveals that ICE has been secretly training agents to break into homes without warrants in violation of the Fourth Amendment. And by the way, trying to cover their tracks. We broke this story yesterday. Tonight, we will have the organization on that made those revelations. An organization, by the way, that has been supported by defiance.org. This is Defiance Daily, dispatches for the defiant. First today, folks, we start with former special counsel Jack Smith, who testified before the House Judiciary Committee today about his investigations into President Donald Trump. Now, if you didn't watch the hearings today, this is what you need to know. Jack Smith told lawmakers that he stands by his decision as special counsel, that he stands by all of those decisions as special counsel, and that his team had proof that Donald Trump knew his allegations about the 2020 election were false, that he caused the January 6th, 2021 insurrection, and that he exploited the violence that occurred. Now, Smith testified today that he believes that he and his team had more than enough evidence to convict Donald Trump on those criminal charges before Donald Trump was reelected. Smith also warned today that there are potentially, in his words, catastrophic ongoing threats to U.S. democracy because of the failure to hold Donald Trump accountable for that criminal conduct and for his attempt to overturn the 2020 election. Now, during the hearing, and predictably so, Donald Trump took to social media once again to threaten Jack Smith. The president accused Smith of committing perjury during his testimony today, but did not elaborate on what he meant or offer any evidence to support the claim. As you can see here, he called Smith deranged and stated, quote, "Hopefully, the attorney general is looking at what he's done, including some of the crooked and corrupt witnesses that he was attempting to use in his case against me." Now, no matter the threats, today in the hearing, Jack Smith refused to back down.
As I testify before the committee today, I want to be clear. I stand by my decisions as special counsel, including the decision to bring charges against President Trump. Our investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump engaged in criminal activity. If asked whether to prosecute a former president based on the same facts today, I would do so regardless of whether that president was a Democrat or a Republican. No one should be above the law in this country, and the law required that he be held to account, so that is what I did. To have done otherwise on the facts of these cases would have been to shirk my duties as a prosecutor and as a public servant, of which I had no intention of doing.
We followed the facts and we followed the law,
and that process resulted in proof beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed serious crimes. I'm not going to pretend that didn't happen because he's threatening me.
Serious crimes, and Smith acknowledging that Donald Trump was threatening him. In fact, members of Congress in the Q&A asked him if he thought he would be persecuted by the president and by the Trump administration. And Smith said yes, he believes that they will look for opportunities to prosecute him, seemingly anticipating Donald Trump's tweet and urging of the attorney general to find a way to prosecute the former special prosecutor for his conduct and for his investigation into Donald Trump. But there wasn't just that investigation into Donald Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election and prevent the peaceful transfer of power. Jack Smith today also stood by his decision to investigate and prosecute Donald Trump for illegally retaining mounds of classified documents at his residence after the presidency, when Donald Trump was no longer an elected official, when Donald Trump no longer had a right or a responsibility to be holding on to classified national security information. And Smith noted during the testimony today that some of those highly sensitive national security documents were found in places like a ballroom and a bathroom of Donald Trump's home.
Rather than accept his defeat in the 2020 election, President Trump engaged in a criminal scheme to overturn the results and prevent the lawful transfer of power. After leaving office in January of 21, President Trump illegally kept classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago social club and repeatedly tried to obstruct justice to conceal his continued retention of those documents. Highly sensitive national security information was held in a ballroom and a bathroom.
A ballroom and a bathroom. We'll talk about that again a little bit more when my co-founder joins us. But let me just add this. Smith was not the only target today. During the hearing, Texas Representative Troy Nehls once again took the opportunity to knock down the officers who defended our nation's capital on January 6th. And that's when former D.C. officer Michael Fanone, who was in observance of the hearing today, took a subtle, not so subtle jab at the way Nehls was presenting the situation. Take a look.
That is proof beyond a reasonable doubt that the crap you were shoveling did not pass the smell test with the American people. To put it bluntly, Mr. Smith, the stink remains on you. And lastly, I would like to quickly address the police officers of January 6th. Mr. Dunn, Mr. Fanone, Mr. Gonell, Mr. Hodges. I'm a member of the new select committee to actually examine what happened that day. And I can tell you, gentlemen, that the fault does not lie with Donald Trump. It lies with Yogananda Pittman and the U.S. Capitol leadership team. We know they had the intelligence, and there was going to be a high propensity for violence that day. Claim my time, yeah.
You will be in order. The time belongs to the gentleman from Texas. We've had some disruptions already. We don't need that. Let the gentleman may continue.
I want to bring in Defiance.org co-founder Xander Schultz into the conversation. Xander, I think this just goes to show you the warped reality we live in, that a sitting member of Congress was basically saying 5 years later, the fault of the insurrection at the United States Capitol was not Donald Trump. It was not the people who stormed the Capitol. It was not the people who assaulted federal law enforcement agents. It was the law enforcement agents who were defending the Capitol. This is completely crazy, man. I want to get your reaction to that.
I think the kids call it gaslighting.
yeah. I think if ever there was an appropriate time to use the term, damn it, it's this one.
Yeah. It's so interesting sometimes. Things like what Jack Smith is doing, which is just telling the truth, feel brave when it's on television, and the police officer telling the guy to go fuck himself when he's clearly lying to the face of people who went through something horrific. There's this discrepancy from how this whole body is acting and what the American people are seeing with their eyes. And it's so refreshing when you see someone like Jack Smith say things clearly, and you realize how often even the leaders on our side are milly-mouth about this stuff. So that really came through to me. Is like Jack Smith is saying it the same way you and I say it, when we're having coffee in the morning talking to each other. And it's really nice to see and hear, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I think that Smith and his willingness to testify are a really powerful act of defiance. I mean, he could have easily said, look, I want to lay low after all of this.
100%.
I don't want to be out there, or, could have just stopped at testifying in private, which he had already done to members of the committee, but he demanded a public hearing. He wanted a public hearing. He felt like the information needed to be out there in front of the public, even though Jack Smith knew he was going to be sworn in on this hearing. He knew that any tiny verbal misstep was going to be watched by this Justice Department for some sort of sham prosecution, and he did it anyway. And I say sham prosecution because we have already seen sham prosecutions of people like former FBI Director James Comey. Based on what? Well, they said one or two sentences in congressional testimony from years ago was perjury, even though it very obviously was not. They charged him with it. Those charges were thrown out. Jerome Powell is reportedly under investigation for what? Reportedly a couple of wrong sentences about renovations of the Federal Reserve Building. And the Justice Department is threatening to charge him as a way to get leverage over him. And Jack Smith knows that that was a possibility. And then true to form today, Donald Trump gets on social media and basically says, wink, nod, hey, Attorney General, you better listen to this testimony and find anything that's slightly off so we can charge the guy. And yet Jack Smith showed up anyway, Xander.
Yeah, all these guys are getting the Al Capone treatment where you look around, you try to get him for tax fraud or something like that. It's like the whole thing's been flipped. Now the mafia boss is looking at all of us that are defending the Constitution, fighting back, giving us the Capone treatment and doing these investigations where they're trying to find anything where they can get us to, slip up along the way. And we've got a lot of laws in this country. It's especially if you're someone like Jack Smith that's, on the record all the time or whatnot, there's a lot of ways you can get folks to slip up. And so it's not how the justice system's supposed to work, where you just pick someone and look into them and figure it out. And so it's a brave new world we're in.
Well, Xander, you used a term earlier, gaslighting. There's another term that's popular among the kids, projecting. And I would say that we have seen Donald Trump projecting a lot since he came back into office on the classified documents case. So here was Trump. I think according to Smith's investigation, it was something like 183 classified documents were found in Donald Trump's possession. Crazy stuff, crazy mounds of documents that anyone who's ever served in government knows. If you left with those documents with classification markings about allegedly things like nuclear weapons and sensitive foreign programs, you're going to go to prison if you willingly took those things. Donald Trump, just as a refresher for folks, took those documents, when told to return those documents, refused to return those documents, and then reportedly there was evidence that he had his staff move those documents around. So there's not just the, Joe Biden who accidentally had a document or two from years ago in his garage moving out as a government official. That's happened to government officials of both parties. We have a former president knowing and willfully hiding sensitive classified documents from investigators. And I say projecting, Xander, because since Donald Trump has returned to office, whether it's charges he's brought against John Bolton, whether
I was just about to mention Bolton
against critics, he's trying to make it seem like, no, I'm not the one who's mishandling classified information. It's just my adversaries. I mean, Xander, even in the executive order to investigate me, the administration says something like, go look this up, folks. If you're watching, go look at Miles Taylor executive order. Says, I committed treason and can't be trusted because I used unauthorized methods to collect information. No further information about what those unauthorized methods are or what sensitive national security information I took out of the government. And I'll tell you why, because there isn't any. What I did was come out and criticize the president, and apparently leaving with your memories of Donald Trump's acts of corruption are unauthorized methods and national security information. I'm sorry, the president doesn't get to say that. He doesn't get to leave and say, you can't tell people bad things about me. That's classified. Well, you know what, Xander? In the United States, criticism of a president is not classified, and for damn good reason.
Is there a starker contrast than them arguing that January 6th was a peaceful protest while simultaneously saying they need to invade Minneapolis because of the violent insurrection that's happening in Minneapolis right now, with videos where even the person they killed is saying something like, "I'm not mad at you, dude." So the hypocrisy is kind of never ending. It's a great example of it. These guys kind of gaslighting these police officers to say, January 6th, it wasn't the fault of the insurrectionists, while also advocating for sending in the National Guard and ICE and all these deployments in Minneapolis. Is just gross.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're going to get to that today, too. And I'll just say, Xander, before we move on, if folks want to continue to hear the real story of who Donald Trump is, of what this administration's doing, not a partisan story, not a rewrite, then I urge you, please like and share and subscribe to defiance.org. You can sign up for free for our updates on defiance.org. And importantly, along that vein of telling the truth, if you do, you will get the invitation to our State of the Union event on February 24th. This is very, very important, and I'm going to tell you why. Because on February 24th of this year, Donald Trump will go do his first State of the Union address as president. He is going to use that address to defend everything that's happened over the past year of his second administration. A year, by the way, that legal experts point to being one of the most lawless years on record of any president in American history, if not the most brazenly lawless year. And as I've said before, that's not hyperbole, it's not speculation. That's based on how many federal judges have ruled this administration's actions unconstitutional. Sign up at defiance.org to become a member, or subscribe to our updates on Substack and YouTube to find out more. And you can get that invitation to our event held the same night as the State of the Union. That's right. We are hosting on February 24th something called State of the Swamp, the rebuttal to the State of the Union. Right now, you can find out who's in that lineup for the event. If you go to defiance.news, you can see the lineup for the event. And tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern, tickets become available to the general public. If you are already a member of defiance.org, you can access the presale right now, today, to get in-person or virtual tickets to that event. We will be hosting the real State of the Union address to counter the lies that Donald Trump propagates on February 24th. So join us in Washington, D.C. Go to the website, sign up, and again, please like, share, and subscribe on social media platforms. We go into our second story of today. Minneapolis, which continues to be a hotbed of the Trump administration's autocratic actions and a flashpoint of national outrage. We start today in talking about Minneapolis with ICE and the fact that the agency has been blasted for using a 5-year-old boy as bait in an incident this week. Take a listen.
Meanwhile, another major flashpoint on the ground here, a local school district who's sounding alarms. They say about 4 of their students taken into ICE custody, including a 5-year-old boy who they say was detained with his father in the family's driveway. The district alleges that another adult in the home begged agents to leave the child with them, but that the agents refused. NBC News reached out to DHS about this overnight for comment. They didn't respond to us, but the agency did tell the Washington Post that their policy is to ask parents if they want to be removed with their children or be placed with a person designated by the parent. And all of this comes as the administration now appears to be, or is, expanding their immigration operations to the state of Maine, calling that one Operation Catch of the Day, and stressing there, like they have done here in Minneapolis, that they're apprehending, in their words, the worst of the worst.
Catch of the Day, talking about human beings like they're fish. So let me just say this. I want to foot stomp what was said about the 5-year-old. A 5-year-old child used as bait to lure his father out of a home. That is what this administration is doing, using children as tools to try to coerce people out of their homes and into the custody of federal law enforcement agents. And if that image of that child being used as bait wasn't sickening enough, the family of Renee Nicole Good released autopsy results today, which experts say validate the claim that ICE agents, and one ICE agent in particular, were responsible for the shooting, murder, of Renee Nicole Good. As you know, Good was shot 3 times by federal immigration officers on January 7th, 2026 in Minneapolis. And according to those autopsy results, 1 bullet struck her left forearm, another hit her in the chest, and a third, the fatal wound, hit her in the head. The autopsy report also indicated that there was a 4th grazed wound that did not penetrate her body. And those experts are saying that the results are not good news for the ICE agent who shot the victim. In fact, top lawyer Ryan Goodman, who runs the website justsecurity.org, wrote on social media, quote, "As a lawyer, I've been waiting for this. Independent autopsy of Renee Good is in. Strong evidence against Agent Ross, given what it means about second or third shot through left side window. It's second and third shots that make easiest criminal case of a willful killing." And on top of all of this, the vice president landed in the city of Minneapolis today and mocked Minnesotans for their reaction to the federal crackdown. But before we get to that, the vice president first made an outlandish claim that ICE is not stereotyping based on skin color. They're just looking for people who they already know are here illegally or otherwise overstayed their visas. Take a listen.
Now, to the accusation of racial profiling, look, it's something that we take very seriously. We will take accusations of racial profiling back to Washington. We'll certainly look into them as they come up. But this is not a group that's going around and looking for people who violated the law based on skin color. They're looking for people who violated the actual law, the law of our immigration system in this country.
Really? There's no racial profiling happening by ICE? Commentators and social media users mocked the vice president's comments, especially given that almost daily we are seeing recorded evidence of ICE doing the exact opposite of what he says, stopping people based on how they look, or in this case, how they speak.
You were from this country. I'm an immigration officer.
What do you mean if I'm from this country?
I can hear you don't have the same accent as me. That's why I'm
Oh,
asking.
so you're going by accents now?
I want to know where you were born. Where were you born?
Is that accents? Have you heard the Israeli accent? Have you heard the European accent?
You just
it's
proved
garbage.
my point. You're a brilliant
It's
man.
retarded,
You just
dude.
proved my point.
You going by accents?
Man. You just proved other countries.
You guys want to argue? I got time. I got time today.
You're not arguing.
I'm just going to tell you a personal note here. The reason this is so astounding is before our show, I asked our producer to pull that clip, the one where the ICE officer confronts the guy about his accent. That's not the clip I was planning on seeing. That clip proves the point, but I was thinking of another clip where an ICE agent confronts a guy about his accent because he has a foreign accent, and then the guy with the accent says to the ICE agent, "You have an accent too," because the agent seemed to have a foreign accent himself. My point here is there are now so many of these clips. Of course, our producer didn't know what I was talking about. There are so many different recorded examples of ICE confronting people based on how they look or how they talk. It's extraordinary that the vice president could make the claim that he made. What's more, J.D. Vance said he was perplexed by the way the people of Minneapolis had reacted to all of this.
But no, we're not trying to send a political message. We're trying to enforce the law. And unfortunately, what has happened is that as we've enforced the law, there's been this weird reaction, again, unique to this city. This is not a common thing across the United States of America. There's been a very unique, very Minneapolis-specific reaction to our enforcement of federal immigration laws. What I'm trying to do here today is understand why that is. What is it about Minneapolis that has become so chaotic? What are the specific types of cooperation that we need? Look, I don't need Tim Walz or Jacob Frey or anybody else to come out and say that they agree with J.D. Vance or Donald Trump on immigration. I just don't need.
A weird reaction. The people of Minneapolis, the people of Minnesota, the people of the United States, in the eyes of the vice president, are having a weird reaction to all of this. Nothing would justify them protesting. Nothing would justify the anger. Certainly not the murder of an unarmed woman in Minneapolis. Certainly not the warrantless invasion of homes. Certainly not the use of children to try to lure people out towards arrest. Certainly not the lies every day coming out from the administration about domestic terrorist attacks. Certainly not the obvious racial profiling happening. A weird reaction, he says. Well, this leads us to our third story of the day, which I'm going to jump into, and then we've got guests here to talk about it. But let me just give you a quick refresher. we brought you breaking news at the top end of yesterday's program about a bombshell Associated Press report about ICE training agents to effectively violate the Fourth Amendment. Let me just read to you briefly from that report. Federal immigration officers are asserting a sweeping power to forcibly enter people's homes without a judge's warrant, according to internal ICE memos obtained by the Associated Press, marking a sharp reversal of longstanding guidance meant to protect constitutional limits on government searches. The memo authorizes ICE officers to use force to enter a residence based solely on a more narrow administrative warrant to arrest someone with a final order of removal, a move that advocates say collides with Fourth Amendment protections and upends years of advice given to immigrant communities. With us today to talk more about this are Whistleblower Aid Chief Strategy Officer Naomi Seligman and Whistleblower Aid Special Counsel David Kligerman, who are representing the two anonymous whistleblowers who came forward with this complaint to the United States Senate. Naomi and David, welcome to Defiance Daily.
Thank you.
Appreciate you joining us. Hi, how are you, my friend? David, let me start with you. Tell us a little bit about this complaint, what you can about the individuals who brought this forward to you, the anonymous whistleblowers, and what this complaint really means.
Sure. First, at whistleblower.org, we have lots of whistleblowers that come forward, and we're never unamazed by their bravery. And certainly in this case and in this environment for them to come forward. And the fact that they came forward under these circumstances speaks volumes to the seriousness of this disclosure. And at the heart of the disclosure is a memo that's been kept hidden, a secretive memo that authorizes ICE agents to enter people's homes without a judicial warrant. So in short, what that means is to enter people's homes in violation of the constitutional standard, which has existed for a very, very, very long time, and in violation of DHS and pre-DHS standards that have gone back almost half a century.
I was muted, sorry. Naomi, tell me how we should be processing this information, because the administration has been telling us again and again and again that ICE agents are not violating procedure, including these videos we've seen of agents clearly breaking into homes without a warrant signed by a judge. And I've been saying something almost every day since we've been seeing these videos. I've been saying one of two things is true. Either the administration is lying through its teeth and willfully breaking the law, or it has secretly changed the guidance for ICE agents since I was at the Department of Homeland Security. I never expected that the answer would be both of those, that the administration is lying through its teeth about violations of law because it has secretly authorized agents to violate the law. Do I have that wrong, or would you say that's roughly accurate?
I think that is roughly accurate. Senator Blumenthal's office has worked very closely on this issue. And, what he had to say was every American should be terrified by this secret ICE policy authorizing its agents to kick down your door and storm into your house. So he said it's legally and morally abhorrent policy. And I don't think we could agree more. They are twisting themselves, the administration is twisting itself in knots to try to justify this unbelievably abhorrent policy that is putting countless lives in danger. And so as we see this time and again, this administration will come out with these and not come out publicly, these secret memos, they get leaked, they get lawfully disclosed, which this one was. And then they sort of try to flip backwards and say, oh, well, this is what we meant and this is what's always has happened. And it's really gaslighting the American public and policymakers and those of us that are affected across the country.
David, tell me where you think this goes next. I mean, surely there are an array of lawsuits, if not already filed, underway about a number of these ICE intrusions into people's homes. I've got to think that this is Supreme Court material, if there ever was, to look at this agency's systemic abuses of power and to hopefully reinforce the Fourth Amendment. But tell me, where do you think this goes, especially in light of the anonymous whistleblowers that came forward to you all?
Yeah, certainly this will go to court, and the vice president in his remarks today said as much, that this will be decided in the courts. Not exactly a strong show of support for the policy. And one would hope that the Supreme Court would uphold these fundamental rights. But I think what you're seeing is an attempt really to calve off, to chip away at this broader right. So the concern is you could end up with a ruling that says everyone else is safe except certain categories of folks subject to certain types of removal, non-criminal. Again, this is all non-criminal. But once that happens, it's game over, because the standard to challenge action, the standard to hold police accountable under Bivens, which is a standard to ordinarily civilly sue law enforcement, other government officials when they break the law and violate your rights, has been so gutted by this court that there would be no recourse, because they could claim, well, we made a mistake. We could do it under these set of circumstances for this small category of folks who are not here lawfully, and therefore we could do it to anybody. Oops, we made a mistake. So that's the really scary part about this, not just that it affects the rights of everybody, certain groups of people who are here and looking to, adjudicate their status or trying to work through the courts, but every American, because once the genie's out of the bottle, the government has pretext to kick down every door without a warrant.
Well, Naomi, add this to the pile. I said at the top of the program that dozens of federal judges across the past 12 months have ruled the administration has broken the law across a zillion different domains. I mean, breaking the law by not respecting, laws passed by Congress, by ignoring the courts, by violating the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 14th Amendment. I mean, we have just seen a blitz of federal judges. And my former conservative colleagues will come out there and say, these are just activist judges. They're just after Donald Trump. I mean, wrong. We have had Trump judge after Trump judge and conservative judge after conservative judge appointed by Republican predecessors in the White House ruling against this administration on constitutional grounds. This is yet one more example, but there is a silver lining. And when I saw this story break yesterday, I thought, okay, this is bad. It's another constitutional violation by this administration, but we wouldn't know about it were it not for apparently two brave people who decided to take the risk, come forward, and make these disclosures. And a lot of us have spoken about how scary the environment is for people to blow the whistle, but you all are de-risking that. You all are creating an avenue for people to come forward and expose presidential misconduct. Tell me a little bit about that and how these revelations fit in exactly to the mission you all are undertaking in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's not an amendment this administration is not willing to trample. And so what we're doing right now is working with the bravest of the brave whistleblowers who are coming out of agencies across the administration and have decided enough is enough. What we do is we keep them safe and legal and make sure that their disclosures are responsible. And we make sure that every whistleblower that comes to us, every client that comes to us has impact and comes out whole on the other side. So we know that there are so many folks out there that right now would love to say something but are terrified, and we get that. So what we do is we wrap our services around them. So not only do we provide legal help, communications, advocacy, and allies, really strong allies. For example, on this, we're working with immigration organizations across the country. But we also make sure that if their last friend in the world is a dog, that we pay vet bills. We also make sure that there is physical, if needed, and cyber security. We make sure that they can continue to live their lives as comfortably and safe as possible. And I will say we have a 100% track record of not one of our clients being exposed by this or any other administration. So we're working hard at whistlebloweraid.org to keep people safe, to make sure that the truth is exposed and that it actually has impact, that we are making sure that there is resolution to these really important and jarring questions we're seeing every day, and that we're navigating this administration, which is trying to close off every single accountability mechanism out there. And we are coming back and working with the Senate and finding offices here and there. And that's a lot of what we're doing now, is finding the right path for each client to make sure that they can do what they have stood up to do and make them feel as though what they've done matters, and they come out of this in a real and proud way.
David, final question to you. Are you taking heart in the fact that people are coming forward and doing this? Is there a trend line here that you all are seeing at Whistleblower Aid of people getting braver despite the intimidation and the threats from this administration?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is people continuing to be brave in the face of these dangers. And what we're seeing is the challenges in surfacing this information because a lot of the doors are closed to them, whether it be the lack of inspectors general, whether it be the lack of a special counsel, whether it be the lack of bipartisan support for anything nowadays in the Congress that goes against this administration. So what we're seeing, and I think maybe it's counterintuitive, but we're seeing an increase in the amount of people who are willing to go forward, but because of the decrease in the lawful paths, what you're seeing is a stovepiping of information, because it takes a while. Folks have to figure out how to do it safely. They have to figure out who can help them with this. I mean, it's not that we have billboards out there, and then they have to be
not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, it's funny you say that, David. We have some billboards out there that we've worked together with you guys on, which I'll talk about on the back end. But for now, let me say this. I know you guys have a lot more media to do. This was a bombshell story. Whistleblower Aids, Naomi Seligman, and Special Counsel David Kleekerman, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for the work that you do. This was a really, really important one, and we're proud to be partnered with you all.
Thank you, Miles. We're so grateful to be part of the defiance.org world. So thank you for having us and being such good partners. We appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, friends, for joining us. Let me bring back into the conversation my defiance.org co-founder, Xander Schultz. Xander, I just want to say, I mean, one of the things that struck me when I saw this headline yesterday, obviously, was not just how important this report was, but how important some of these partnerships can be. I mean, we have now done a couple of different things with Whistleblower Aid for exactly this purpose. I mean, one of the reasons that defiance.org members were so adamant about giving grants to Whistleblower Aid, teaming with them on a separate issue related to illegal orders in the military, was because we need to elevate these opportunities for whistleblowers to come forward safely. And it's working. I mean, I would say to our members, this is the perfect example of the type of organization we are going out there and supporting so they can do what you just saw. They can help expose presidential misconduct, abuses of power, and violations of the Constitution. You just saw Whistleblower Aid do that. Your thoughts, Xander?
Yeah, Miles, when we were talking about launching this organization, we were saying there was this big discrepancy between people constantly asking, what can I do, and not receiving direction, and the leaders you and I know. Like, we have so many great knights out there willing to take on this fight. I mean, we were talking about Jack Smith today, Whistleblower Aid. This is the third time Naomi's been on the program. She's the first three-time guest on.
Yeah,
they do such
you
great
get a
work.
jacket for that. You get a special jacket.
Yeah, it's like winning the Masters. We had Tara McGowan, building new media organizations yesterday. There are incredible people that most Americans do not know about that are ready to fight. And, I think our job is just being a medium to give them a platform so we are both supporting them and then taking orders from them to the extent that we can support what they're doing. I had a couple thoughts on this story. One, the Fourth Amendment is about as American as it gets. A lot of our independent movement started when James Otis, who was a founding father, gave a great speech on writs of assistance, which was essentially like the British colonial term for exactly what we're seeing. It's home invasion without probable cause. And he said basically it turned every officer into a tyrant. And it's clear as day, that's exactly what it does now. The speech was so important in this idea of protection of your personal property from just a subjective whims of an autocrat was so important that John Adams said after James Otis' speech, then and there, child independence was born. It was the beginning of the independence movement and this thought around moving away from these guys. And so I just want to kind of remind us like how central this idea of protection from authoritarianism is to the American vision. Secondly, you and I spoke about this, I think yesterday or the day before. It's so clear that Trump is trying to get these ICE agents killed. It's so clear he wants to have something awful happen to these guys so he can escalate. And this is such a good example of that. People breaking your home without warrants, you don't know who's at the front door necessarily. Someone doesn't have to be a radical to try to protect their home from a break-in where they don't know where it's coming from. And so he is clearly being so careless and reckless with these ICE officers' lives as well, so he can get the reason for the escalation that he clearly is angling for.
Yeah. Well, before we go into our final story of the day, Xander, I just want to say again to folks that are subscribers to and members of defiance.org, this is why you're a part of what we are doing. Is we started this because you asked the question, what can I do? And rather than just look at how dark the news is every day, you are doing something about it. I mean, if it were not for you all supporting organizations like Whistleblower Aid and Courier and others, we might not get revelations like this one we had yesterday about the administration's abuses of power. This is what it is all about, is to make it easier for people to come forward, to highlight these things, to go challenge them in the courts. Now, I don't know how those two anonymous whistleblowers inside ICE came forward. I don't know what their decision process was like, but I've got to think that somewhere along the line, they heard that they could go get support at somewhere like Whistleblower Aid. Folks like you, through this organization and others, have supported Whistleblower Aid to provide that legal assistance, and they have made disclosures that can turn these abuses of power around. This is real, folks. This is real. And we should not just spend our time reading the sad news. We should do something about it. That's why we're here. That's why we exist. And just really thrilled to see this success story out of Whistleblower Aid and what they've done. Xander, our final story today comes from a headline that once again shows how the White House has been falsifying the narrative around its immigration crackdown. Late this morning, it appears the Trump administration may have used artificial intelligence to alter an image tied to a protest arrest in Minneapolis. Today, while civil rights attorney and activist Nikema Levi Strong was being arrested following a viral protest at a St. Paul church over the weekend, the White House shared a photo of the arrest. In that image, Armstrong appears to be crying. That's what you see on the right. But just moments earlier, Kristi Noem, Secretary of Homeland Security, herself had posted the original photo on her own account. That image is on the left. Side by side, folks, take a look here. The differences are pretty hard to miss. The altered version on the right only appears after the White House shared it, leaving a clear trail of an image changed to fit a narrative. And this gets to the heart of the problem. When the administration edits images and rewrites reality and then posts it as fact, trust in government, trust in the system collapses. If they will manipulate a photo, they will manipulate the story, they will try to manipulate the American people. Now, we will be following Armstrong's case and story as it progresses, but that's also tied to our segment, our final segment of the day and every day, who is joining the defiance? Because we want to turn the camera to another person that has been wrapped up in this investigation of the protest at that church. Today, for who is joining the defiance, we want to welcome a magistrate judge by the name of Douglas Micco, a Minnesota federal magistrate judge who refused to sign a complaint this week charging independent journalist Don Lemon in connection with a protest inside that church in St. Paul, Minnesota on Sunday. Multiple sources familiar with the proceedings tell CBS News that the judge did not sign this complaint from the Justice Department to charge Don Lemon with a crime. A source familiar with the matter, a source familiar with the Attorney General's thinking said, quote, "The Attorney General is enraged at the magistrate judge's decision." Now, Attorney General Pam Bondi has been in Minnesota for 2 days as the Justice Department has sought to surge prosecutorial and law enforcement resources there. A different source stressed that the process is not over and the Justice Department could find other avenues to charge Don Lemon. Don Lemon's attorney, world-famous lawyer Abby Lowell, said in a statement Thursday that the magistrate's actions, quote, confirm the nature of Don's First Amendment protected work this weekend in Minnesota as a reporter. Should the Department of Justice continue with a stunning and troubling effort to silence and punish a journalist for doing his job, Don will call out their latest attack on the rule of law and fight any charges vigorously and thoroughly in court. So today, the answer to that question, who is joining the defiance, is a Minnesota federal magistrate judge most of you have never heard of, but who decided to stand up to the Justice Department to stop yet another abuse of power. Xander, I want to bring you back into the conversation. I will just note, as a matter of full disclosure, I also have the same attorney as Don Lemon. Abby Lowell represents me as well in my case against the Trump administration. I think you'll find if you Google Abby Lowell, he has become sort of the go-to attorney for people who've been targeted by the administration's abuses of power. And regardless of political affiliation, he has represented Donald Trump's children before. He's represented Joe Biden's children before. He's represented senators and congressmen and people on both sides of the aisle, and is now apparently also representing Don Lemon in this case. I think this is a really good one, Xander, because this shows, again, we're almost seeing weekly that the lower courts are pushing back really hard against the administration in cases where lower courts would normally just sign a complaint and say, yeah, go charge that person. We'll defer to you, the Justice Department. They're not deferring to the Justice Department anymore. They're not trusting what's coming out of the U.S. Department of Justice. Totally.
It's also another nice validation of the new media strategy we talked about yesterday, that there's not the usual mechanisms to intimidate Don Lemon Inc. over there. They can't block a merger of his. They can't do, the number of things they've tried to do to ABC, et cetera. And so they're trying to, go directly at him with the Justice Department. As we can see, to your point, the lower courts have mostly done a great job during this entire authoritarian threat. This is just another great example of it. But so I think, bonus points for new media, bonus points for the lower courts. It's really important to see both of those institutions holding up.
Yeah. Well, let's take some questions, Xander, from defiance.org members. Just as a reminder, if you are a member of defiance.org, you can ask questions every day on the program if you log into the chat on Substack, and you can find the defiance.org Substack at defiance.news. So we have a number of different questions in the chat today. Lori asks, do you think Trump has a red line on anything? Lori, I'm going to tell you, real answer here. No, I don't think he does. And but let's not have that just be Miles Taylor's speculation. Look at what a month ago Donald Trump's White House chief of staff said. She said that Donald Trump does not view any limitations on his power. Nothing, none, nothing. That was basically her exact quote. That was scary enough when she said it. Now, defenders of the president might have gone out there in December and said, well, Susie Wiles is speaking figuratively. The president sees himself as, being able to do a lot of things to help the American people, but he's not going to violate the rule of law. Well, wrong again, because Donald Trump last week in an interview said, 2 weeks ago in an interview said, he believes the only limitations on his power are his own conscience. Those were his words to the New York Times in an interview. His own conscience is the only limitation he believes that he has. So, Lori, if that's the standard, if that's the red line, I will just tell you, in my limited experience with the man, that red line is far, far, far down at the horizon, because there are very few things that Donald Trump's conscience, in my experience, would stop him from doing. I don't know, Xander, maybe you've had a different experience with the president.
Red lines. He seems to not like vegetables. Women over 22, he seems to have an issue with. He does seem to have an issue with lots of things. They just don't help us necessarily.
You can't make that up. You can't make that up. I will just say, like, on that line, it's almost like we've been on a quest for the past few years to find, what's the one thing that will shock the conscience of the public for them to know about Donald Trump? And unfortunately, I don't even think if more shocking things came out about the Epstein files and Trump that, it would win away very many people from his movement. They've just kind of started to accept that this is who Donald Trump is, and they filter it out and continue to support him. I mean, one of those things, Xander, a few years ago, I came out and revealed that senior White House officials had told me during the first Trump administration about anecdotes where Trump and his aides were discussing and laughing about his daughter, Ivanka Trump, having sexual conversations with her, speculating about what it might be like to have sex with her. And former White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, had to remind the president that Ivanka Trump is his daughter. Now, that's what people had told me at the time. And when I came forward and revealed that, I thought, this has got to be the thing. This has got to be the thing that disgusts and shocks people. If the president's own former chief of staff and other officials at the White House are alleging that the president made sexual comments about his own daughter, is that not going to turn people against him? And by the way, you don't even have to believe that someone like John Kelly or senior White House aides witnessed Donald Trump saying things like this. You can go look up the supercut. There's a supercut of videos of Donald Trump on radio shows, on television shows, saying very sexual and weird things about his child, about his daughter. And somehow, Lori, even that is not a red line for Donald Trump or his supporters. That is deeply disturbing, to say the very least, right?
Although it is a good example, Miles. We've had a lot of different strategies that we've spoken about on here. We need to probably bring on more folks that understand and are being active in talking to Trump's base, because this is like the great mystery of our time. Like, guys, what is it? What do you need to see? What are you not seeing? Why are you so why is it so hard to move you out of this supportive position? And so I talked to a neuroscientist today who runs something interesting enough called Defiance Dispatch. It's the name of her organization. What? That's focused on exactly what you need to do.
We're going to have to sue her before we engage with her.
So we're certainly exploring it. We've got actually on Monday, we've got a couple guests coming on that focus specifically on bridging. So this is on top of obviously defeating authoritarianism. We've got to figure out what the kind of pulling the rabbit out of the hat trick is. To your point, if it's not this guy wants to bang his daughter, like what is it that unlocks this coalition that we can then organize into the resistance? Because we absolutely need it to come out of this moment.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more with you. I think we have to figure out what those potential levers are. But I will say on the bright side, more and more people are quietly, soft quitting the Republican Party or stepping away and joining the Defiance. And that's not just folks like me that saw Trump in the first administration, were disgusted by what we saw, and are coming out to blow the whistle. I mean, millions of Americans, if you look at surveys, are de-associating with the Republican Party. I think we saw 2 weeks ago in a survey that the highest watermark ever of American voters say they are independents. And millions of those come from defections from the Republican Party. Is people maybe not necessarily coming forward and saying, I'm going to oppose Donald Trump, but saying, I can't be a part of this anymore. That's an encouraging thing to see. And this leads to another question, Xander, from a defiance.org member. Candace asks, hey guys, do you feel that we are close to a flashpoint here in this country? Xander, I'll get your answer to that, but let me just say on my end, yes, but not in the way that you might think, Candace. I mean, I worry about acts of political violence. I worry about continued, threats of violence and things that we've seen. I've been warning about that for years, and I could go on about that for hours. But the flashpoint that has me encouraged is seeing so many people standing up. I mean, if the vice president thinks that the response in Minneapolis is a weird reaction, I think it's a powerful and patriotic reaction. And judging by all of the agents there surging into Minneapolis, all of the prosecutors there surging into Minneapolis, the fact that the vice president's there and the attorney general is there, don't be disheartened by that. Be encouraged by that.
Yeah.
Because they're realizing they cannot stem this tide. They cannot stop people from protesting their actions. They can't prevent whistleblowers from coming forward to organizations, Candace, that you and I are actively supporting with our dollars. They can't stop it. And it's driving them crazy. And so, in my view, the flashpoint right now is the Defiance is breaking through the dam. I see it every day. I'm feeling it every day. And these guys, it's like water through rocks. They're trying to stop it. Like all wannabe dictators and dictatorships, they are going to try to stop it, but they will not be able to stop it. But Xander, I don't know. You tell me, is there another flashpoint you see on the horizon?
Well, I think the point you're making is really good. Flashpoints can happen in either direction, right? There can be something, like the Charlie Kirk assassination where it rises, the tension of the country rises and you don't really know what direction it's going to go. But you can also have a video like that 5-year-old being held by ICE members. And if you weren't ready to clearly see the evil in this movement, that helps. And there's a number of historical moments that were triggered by an image of a child being hurt or killed, whether it's the Napalm Girl, the kids in the civil rights movement. We've talked about this a few times. I've spoken a few times about how I, worked during the refugee crisis. We saw a lot of children drown, and we saw a lot of kids cold, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I came back from that trip, and I thought, maybe the way to judge a society is by how it treats its most at-risk children. And as I had this thought, I excuse me, I found this quote from Nelson Mandela that said, "There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." And so when we talk about flashpoints, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think we're getting to a flashpoint where we're not going to fucking stand for this anymore. And we're going to move in effective ways. And we have a lot of historical evidence. We've talked about nonviolence resistant. We've talked about the tactics that have been used historically. We know what to do. We might not have done it ourselves yet, but there's a lot of evidence on what to do. And it just takes a while. And it takes moments like that to get us up off our ass and doing those things and understanding those things and learning about those things. Miles and I spoke a lot when we, Miles, sorry, I'm monologuing here for a second.
No,
we spoke a lot about when we started this thing. A lot of people said, when are Americans going to wake up? And you and I rejected that notion. We said, I think people are plenty awake. People are fucking pissed all over the country. They just need to be organized. They need to make it easy. Not everyone has connections like we do to these leaders and knows what to do. So we just need to make it easier. We need to educate. Miles and I have no desire to be famous podcasters. We don't give a shit. That's not what we do. I didn't even have social media accounts before this fucking organization started.
That was the best when we started. Xander's like, so wait, if we do this, do I need to be on social media?
This is not, but telling the story, educating is a big part of it. So I said, fuck it, I'll do it. Miles is a TV personality. He's way better at it than me. I'll sit across from him. It's fine. But we're doing it so we can be of service. This isn't another podcast. This isn't another media platform. Please get your friends to join us now if you can. If you haven't, join us. The money's passed through to other groups. We don't keep it. So this is not about us at all, but we promise what we thought was missing was a platform that didn't make it about them. There was a lot of different great organizations out there, but they're busy advocating for themselves and their tool. And it's a dynamic moment, and we need to behave dynamically, fund dynamically, work with groups like Whistleblower Aid today in the ways we do. And so yeah, man, please don't hesitate to go nuts trying to build this with us. It's truly your organization too. Once a month, we meet with all our members. They tell us what they want to do. We're not dictating this even. So
I mean, I have to echo that, because like one of the earliest conversations we had was about the nonprofit industrial complex. And I don't want this to be a knock against all the other nonprofits out there. There's just incredible work happening. We're funding a lot of those groups, but a lot of those groups get built and 99% of their proceeds get spent to just keep growing those groups. Now, oftentimes it's because those groups are the ones doing the work, but they can get very lost going down the pathway of just fundraising for the thing that we are doing. And as Xander noted, a portion of defiance.org member fees go towards running defiance.org, but the majority of the member fees go towards those activations every single week that we are partnering with great established groups around the country to do. In other words, they're going to the real stuff. They're not going to a zillion bureaucrats sitting around. I mean, I keep saying to folks, and I know you guys get tired of me repeating the things that I repeat, but I'm going to do them anyway so you don't forget them. I keep saying we're an organization of 3.5 people, and we're going to stay that way. And that may drive us crazy. I mean, Xander and I may fight like mom and dad sometimes during the day because it's really hard to run an organization. It's really hard to run an organization like this on 3.5 people. But I feel really strongly that we have to keep what we are doing lean so that we are empowering the groups out there doing the work. And We didn't intentionally bring Whistleblower Aid on today to talk about that, but there's such a good example because of that news story that broke. If we instead were focused on, well, let's just, I don't know, fund a bunch of our friends to have a team of 25 to tweet all day about the president, then there wouldn't be funds for us to go empower groups to go do the actual work, to go pay for lawyers to represent whistleblowers who are exposing the fact that ICE is breaking the law and violating the U.S. Constitution. So I just have to applaud, again, members of defiance.org for having the bravery to come forward and do this, for funding incredible groups, for giving us your trust to identify great organizations, great leaders, and great causes that can respond really, really quickly to the moment. That's the reason we do this every week on our weekly Wednesday mission briefs like yesterday, is we want to keep up with the pace of this administration and what they are doing. They're trying to flood the zone with illegality, and we're going to flood the zone with defiance. We are already doing it. We are just shy of 3 months in, and we have done an extraordinary amount of work on that front. So, Xander, I want to close today by highlighting something that we announced on yesterday's program, but some folks might have missed it. We announced, as I mentioned earlier in the program, that we are hosting the biggest rebuttal to Donald Trump's State of the Union on February 24th. And I'm going to ask our producer to put up the lineup, if we have it, of who is going to be speaking at that event. Take a look here, folks. I'm going to have to make my screen bigger. We're going to have remarks and appearances by people like Robert De Niro and Senator Ron Wyden and Stacey Abrams and actor Mark Ruffalo and author Marianne Williamson and comedian Tom Arnold and pro-democracy leaders from both sides of the aisle, from former Democratic Governor Steve Bullock, who was a presidential candidate, all the way to Donald Trump's former communications director, Stephanie Grisham, and everyone in between. I mean, and this is not even the full list. In fact, it's something Xander and I were talking about earlier. We have so many remarkable pro-democracy leaders that want to speak at this event that we are trying to figure out how to fit it all in. Now, here's the thing. You can come to this even if you can't come to Washington, D.C. So you can buy a ticket to come to the event in Washington, D.C. We're expecting those to sell out very, very quickly, but you can also buy a ticket to watch the event virtually. Now, just a quick programming note. Right now, tickets are only available for the next, 12 hours or 16 hours for members of defiance.org. They got emails in their inbox today of the pre-sale. But tomorrow at 12 noon, those tickets go live for everyone in the general public who wants to be a part of this extraordinary, historic rebuttal to Donald Trump's State of the Union in Washington, D.C. And you'll be able to find those tickets at defiance.org/SOTU, S-O-T-U. That stands for State of the Union. Defiance.org/SOTU. Right now, you're going to run into a password-protected wall. That's because Defiance.org members have access to the presale. But take a look. Tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern. We would love if there's still tickets available for members of the public to come join us, to come be a part of that effort. And by the way, Xander, tell them why we're focusing on frogs.
I mean, because they're fun. Was that the answer?
Yeah. The theme of the event, we're calling it State of the Swamp, a rebuttal to the State of the Union. Although we're probably going to change that at some point to say a rebuttal.
Yeah, we really like that. We just
to the State of the Union. Because, we are partnered with the extraordinary Portland Frog Brigade. These are the people who have made the frog the symbol of defiance by going out there at ICE facilities and protests around the country dressed in frog suits. And that absurdity, as we talked about yesterday, has been highlighting the insanity of the Trump administration. Because Trump and team keep saying that the protesters, whether they're in Minnesota or Portland, are terrorists and they're insurrectionists and they're anarchists. I mean, Greg Bovino was just at the microphone this week saying they're anarchists. And then you see someone dressed in a frog suit dancing to electronic music. And how can you say that person is like an enemy of the state and a terrorist? So we're thrilled to partner with them for the event. The theme is going to be frog related. But we're going to have really, really serious conversations too about the danger this country is in and importantly, what we can do about it. So I hope folks join us.
I know we're running a little over time, but really an important anecdotal story from yesterday. One of our frog friends said they brought their 16-year-old daughter to protest ICE in her frog suit. And when she left, she said, "Dad, that was so fun. When can I do that again?" Talking about the need to expand this movement and to fight back against authoritarianism. That's exactly what we need. We need ways for people to engage that feel fun, that do not feel intimidating, that make them want to keep going back, that don't have to require them to draw from this well of endurance and resistance, et cetera. And so, not for nothing, it is fun and silly. And that's the point. It kind of needs to be fun and silly to start getting to that 10 million, 15 million, 20 million threshold that we're trying to get to. If it in fact does come down to us, the people, withdrawing our consent.
I'm going to do a crazy thing.
Can't wait for the reveal here.
Wait. Our producer, Mercedes, did you just put that up? Okay, you want to know something crazy? I just pulled up that video on my desktop, and I was going to play it, and then you played it. Wait, run this again. This is me at the National Press Club yesterday as we were doing a walkthrough ahead of the event. Yeah, that's my frog suit.
Miles Taylor in the flesh. Pro-democracy.
Yeah, I did not think we were going to air that, but I was going to play it anyway. Look, if you only participate in this event to see me embarrass myself in a frog suit, to see other national leaders embarrass themselves in frog suits, then by all means, you're supporting a good cause. You're supporting efforts to counter Trump's abuses of power, and you're going to get a laugh out of it.
And come embarrass yourself. It turns out it's pretty fun. So,
come embarrass yourself. There are a bunch more things that we are going to announce that are tied to that event. We will be back in the next couple of weeks on that, but stay tuned. More headline speakers are going to be added, more revelations about what we are planning around Donald Trump's State of the Union. So check that out. Again, public tickets go on sale tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern at defiance.org/SOTU. That is this episode of Defiance Daily Dispatches for the Defiant. Thank you all for joining us today. A big thanks to my co-founder, Xander Schultz, as always, our producer, Mercedes O'Brien, and our guests on the program. Folks, join us tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern for another episode. In the meantime, as always, stay loud, stay brave, and stay together.